Okay, champ, let people know who you are, and then let's just jump right into it with the current situation you are dealing with right at this very moment that has been stalling your career.
My name is Fast Fred Oquendo. I'm the mandatory heavyweight contender for the World Boxing Association for many, many years. And I'm also, which is my pride and joy in my heart, the president of the Fred Oquendo Boxing Academy, preventing youth violence through boxing, serving youth from all around the globe. And that's my passion. And here I am in Hawaii at the military base, training our fine men and women to make sure they get in good shape and and keep protecting our country well. And that's who I am.
And we're also joined by your attorney to get expert opinions upon this legal matter that you're currently facing in your boxing career. So I'll throw the microphone to him as well.
Yes, thank you so much. Very important at the whole world, the sports world, especially all the followers on your great, podcast here, the truth and why we got to prevent this for future happening.
Okay.
Thanks, Luke. I'm attorney Rayed Shalabi. I met Frez a couple of years ago. Great guy. Always look at him as the champ. So we started this lawsuit up against the WBA for, the injustices that happened to him. So I'll let Frez speak about a couple of things. But once it comes to the legal matters, I can kind of tell you what's going on in court and our position and how we feel Mr. Oquendo's been mistreated in the entire process.
Great. And I'm glad we have such a thorough group to explain this issue. Champ, what is the current situation you have that's ongoing in court over your heavyweight ranking?
Well, right now we're getting ready to have them answer to our complaint for the injustices throughout the years of my career, which pretty much damaged, and they got a lot of explaining to do to the federal judge.
Yeah, Luke, let me just elaborate on that. As you're probably aware, and the fans are aware, this process started in 2014 when Frez was fighting Russian Shagayev for the WBA heavyweight title.
That's correct.
In that heavyweight title match, he was guaranteed a rematch. It was a close fight. He did lose that fight, but he was guaranteed a rematch against Shagayev, which he was not given. After that occurred, there was another fight that was occurring with Francisco Pineda. And they had requested from Frez to take a back seat, and then he would be given, whoever wins that title fight, he'd be given, the fight against that individual. So although Frez didn't agree, that fight went on, and then he was next in line to fight. He didn't get a rematch or a fight in that fight either. So what occurred was Shagayev then fought Pineda, and he won that fight by knockout. However, despite the WBA's ruling that the winner of Shagayev versus Pineda would have to fight Mr. Oquendo, WBA sanctioned a fight between Shagayev and Lucas Brown for the World Heavyweight Championship instead. Yes, that's correct. Mm-hmm. And again told Frez to take a back seat, which he did not agree to, but he didn't sue them at that time. And they told him, listen, Mr. Oquendo, you'll fight the winner of Shagayev versus Brown for the world title fight. Lucas Brown then defeated Shagayev in the 10th round by knockout and became the championship. However, 2 weeks after the fight, it was discovered that Lucas Brown tested positive for steroids. So the WBA suspended Lucas Brown from fighting for 6 months and stripped him of the title, thus reinstating Shagayev as a heavyweight championship. At this point, Mr. Oquendo was finally offered a rematch against Shagayev and was presented with a contract to fight him for the heavyweight championship. However, Shagayev then announced his retirement, leaving the WBA heavyweight championship title vacant. As a result, the WBA ruled that the top 2 available contenders would fight for the vacant WBA title and designated Mr. Oquendo as one of the challengers and Shannon Briggs as the other challenger. So Fred signed a contract out to fight Briggs and agreed to a purse of $500,000 and was scheduled to fight June 3rd of 17. However, 1 week before that fight, Shannon Briggs tested positive for steroids, resulting in Briggs being suspended under the WBA rules and the Oquendo versus Briggs championship bout being canceled. At that point, Frez was still the number 1 contender, and the WBA ruled that the next available contender to replace Briggs in a WBA heavyweight title fight against Oquendo would be Alexander Yusinov. However, instead of mandating Oquendo versus Yusinov for the vacant WBA title, the WBA passed up Mr. Oquendo again, and then he was the number 1 contender and agreed to sanction a fight between Alexander Yusinov and Manuel Char for the vacant title. Manuel Char ended up fighting Alexander Yushinov for the vacant title on November 25th of 17 and won that fight by unanimous decision, becoming the champion. The WBA then ruled that Manuel Char had defended his title against Mr. Oquendo, and that fight was scheduled for September 29th of 18. Pursuant to that contract, if either party tested positive for steroids or if the fight was canceled for any reason because of the fault of either fighter, the opposing fighter would be awarded damages, whatever the purse was being held. A week before the fight, Char tested positive for steroids, and the WBA stripped Char of the championship and suspended him for 6 months. At that point, Frez was not given the purse pursuant to the contract, even though Manuel Char tested positive for steroids. Manuel Char objected to the WBA's adverse ruling, challenged the positive steroids, and the WBA ended up lifting Char's suspension and reinstating him as a champion, which makes absolutely no sense. The WBA then ordered a new fight between Char and Frez that was scheduled for April 6th in Germany, 2019. However, the fight never happened, nor has the WBA enforced its ruling against Char that the champion defend their titles against mandatory challengers once every 9 months. In fact, as you know, Manuel Char hasn't fought since his fight against Alexander Yushinov in November of 2017, but has still retained the WBA heavyweight championship. So the point is, this has been going on since 2014. It's unreasonable. Frez should be the champ. He should have been the champ since 2014. Money damages wouldn't even, put Frez in a situation where he's at, because he'd literally be the champion for the next 7-8 years. If anybody knows Frez's track record and his boxing expertise, he'd knock out any of these guys. So we're in a real bad spot. The WBA knows what they're doing. They're abusing Mr. Oquendo. They abuse several boxers, and it's got to be put to an end. So we filed this lawsuit in federal court in Chicago, and we're looking forward to a decision from the judge on their stance and reinstating Mr. Oquendo as, at the very least, a #1 contender. And
Frez, with all this, what does this do to an athlete, a high-level fighter? Obviously, you've been fighting for titles since going back to Chris Bird. I believe you fought David Tua. How does this whole 7 years, how has this impacted your ability to train kind of with this saga that's been going on?
Great question. A lot of people ask me that, like, man, a lot of other athletes, fighters, they're probably retired and, stopped dealing with boxing, this and that. But, I came from a different cloth. Again, I came, from poverty, Chicago public housing, it was poor. So I've been through worse, came from worse. So it's nothing going to deter me from my goals and my championship aspirations. Like my attorney just said, I just want to be champion. I just want to get that recognition as a world champion, whichever way it is. I sacrificed for the last 6-7 years, as he explained to you the situation, my current situation, trying to get a fight. That hasn't, happened because of these shenanigans with the WBA. But, I have faith. I stay positive. I stay in good shape. You can see always training. I'm out here in Hawaii doing physical workout with our great armed men and women of the Army, getting them ready for boxing myself. And while I'm doing that, I'm getting myself in shape. It's not like I'm taking a vacation, even though I'm in Honolulu, Hawaii. But, of course, I'll be going to the Naval Base in the next hour or so to do some more training. But to answer that question, it just, it's my life. I came from the concrete jungle. I love training. I love staying in shape. And I got this foundation that gives me fire, gives me hope. It gives all other future champions and youth hope that if I could do it, they could do it. You can't get deterred by all these shenanigans about the promoters, the World Boxing Associations, these associations, period. So I'm praying and hoping that I get that championship one way or the other. If I have to fight, that would be beautiful, even though I haven't fought in many years. I'd love to get a couple of tune-ups, because I'm not no spring chicken myself. But here I am today, almost 8 years later, ODA World Championship, and no justice has been done so far. So that's what we're doing now.
And look, if I can chime in on that, you're right about that. The boxing is different. They've taken away the prime years of his life, where it's clear that Frez would be the champion right now. If you look at any other sport, if the NBA stripped somebody of 7 years of their existence in their prime in the NBA or the MLB or the NFL, they would make those situations right. But the WBA does not do that. They wait for you to sue them in federal court. They want you to go and beg for your justice. He should be the champion. He's lost millions and millions and millions of dollars in purse money, recognition around the country. The guy's doing great stuff for his organizations. He's doing a bunch of pro bono stuff, you know, helping out organizations like he's doing now for the Army and he's lost all this. I mean, if he was in, boxing would have been rejuvenated with a guy like Frez. But instead, they put him on the back burner, and there's no justice until he has to file a lawsuit in federal court. And if you know Frez, you know he's a very gentle guy, and he's a very nice guy, but, you know, people can only push so far. You know, he probably should have filed this lawsuit several years ago, but he was trying to resolve stuff with the WBA, but they're just not willing to do so. So we're looking for our day in court, and we're very excited about that.
I guess my next question is, like, how does this happen? And I know you guys can't answer it, but it feels like the media and other stories should be more aware of this. But I guess boxing is now so, for lack of a better, irrelevant. Does this just kind of fall by the wayside? And is that how a situation like this can occur?
I mean, the WBA, they've got money. They can, you know, they're sanctioning big fights. It didn't fall by the wayside. This was not an accident, because when Frez brought up his rights, you know, unfortunately he didn't have proper representation at the time. And Fred's not a litigious guy. And if he was a litigious guy, he would have won several years ago. But, you know, they would massage him and say, you know what, you're going to have the next fight. You're going to have the next fight. And although there's no agreement for him to do so, so he didn't waive his rights, you know, Frez allowed it to occur because he didn't sue them at that point. But this is something the WBA is known for. I mean, this is not the first time it's happened. There's several boxers who have been railroaded. Frez is probably the worst case, but it's happened before, you know, and it's unfortunate. I don't see other sports doing that. I don't see the NBA doing that, or the MLB doing that, or the NFL railroading their own individuals. Sure, they suspend people for, you know, drugs and alcohol and stuff like that, but Frez has never tested positive for steroids or any of that kind of thing. So, you know, they're railroading him for their own benefit.
I guess I kind of asked that question because the heavyweight division is the glamour division of boxing. Everyone at one point wants to be the heavyweight world champion. And I think this is a story a lot of people need to hear, because this is the story of the underdog trying to get his dream. And it's being pushed out there, but I mean, it's not a central story like Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua, which is a mythical fight. It's not really based in reality. It might happen, but this is Frez's life. This is your dream. So, Champ, I guess, do you have anything to add to that?
You know, that's an interesting statement. You say, you know, they got all these world championship, and of course the WBA with multiple championship status that they put out there, and calling, I guess, a Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua super champion, and I'm just the regular WBA heavyweight championship. There's got to be a law, you know, banning that from them making money from all corners, you know, in boxing, you know, from these, you know, new fighters, new champions, to fighters like myself that's been offered a championship fight for almost a decade, and here I am still fighting for justice. You know, they got to have some accountability, because what they're doing is not only ruining my career, you know, I'm trying to prevent this from happening to future generations, from the future boxers, fighters that I'm training today in age from my foundation, you know, that's been pretty successful. And, you know, I help a lot of at-risk youth all over the city of Chicago, the country, and stuff like that. But, you know, that's got to stop. You know, all these multiple titles that the WBA is taxing these promoters and fighters and et cetera, you know, it's got to stop.
And I guess my question is, and obviously you guys probably can't answer this, the Ali has the Ali Act. I guess deep down, besides a settlement or getting your world title shot, would there be a hope that you could maybe get some form of reform or a stipulation on these sanctioning bodies so this doesn't happen to future fighters?
Yeah, that's what we're looking at too, Luke. Yeah, besides restitution and reinstating him as the number one contender, we are looking for something that'll change the policies of the WBA. But just to be clear, these are written contracts. You know, the WBA didn't make a mistake. This was intentional. You know, they were all written contracts that Frez had agreements with them with. He was a number one contender. These guys test positive for steroids, and they go with another fight just to go with another fight because of whatever's better for their financial pocket, without compensating Frez at all. So that's how it happened, because I guess the other fights were commanding more money, or maybe there's a bigger pay-per-view draw. But the contracts are contracts, and you can't just bypass them. And that's why we believe we're going to be very successful. But with Frez and I see his training, he's in shape right now. So when he is granted the number one contender, we feel very confident in him winning the next bout, even though they've taken away probably 7 years of his prime.
So just to make a silly example, the example that comes to my head is, imagine if there's a Super Bowl, someone wins and goes to the Super Bowl and they pick another team instead of the team that won out of the NFC, would be the illustration for what's happening.
Correct. That's 100% accurate. 100%. Because let's say Tampa Bay is playing a team in the Super Bowl and they say, you know what? Well, it's not a hot commodity. We'd rather have the Chicago Bears playing that Super Bowl because we're going to get a bigger revenue draw. It's exactly that comparison. They're taking Tampa Bay out and putting the Bears in, even though Tampa Bay has secured that number one title spot and has a contract to play in that Super Bowl. So great analogy.
So like, I mean, I'd even say it's like Tampa Bay versus New England Patriots, because you're like, you get all the fodder and everyone's like, oh, we really want that juicy matchup. But then it's like the fairness. It's like, they're supposed to be like, we tune into sports because it's the great equalizer. There's a human condition. We love seeing the fairness of it. And it seems like Perez is being not allowed to see how far he can go in the sport because of this.
Totally agree. I totally agree. And I think that's why the WBA there's been a turnoff with fans with the WBA, because they see that. You know, it's clear boxers have come out. There's been lawsuits before that have been won against WBA, several of them, where people read about it. People read your blogs. People go on YouTube. They see it, and they're not happy with that. Like you just said, if they replace the team and put the Patriots versus the Buccaneers, how many NFL fans would there really be if they just replaced teams whenever they felt like it? You know, so they're really doing themselves a disservice, and it needs to be reconstructed and done properly.
And this is what's hurting the sport, because like the heavyweight division's a glamour division. We tuned in because of Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, Riddick Bowe Holyfield, these type of fights. When we understand that it's more of a business than a sport, that's when I think fans stop paying attention.
100%. Look at what's dominating boxing now. It's an embarrassment. Celebrity boxing. You know, you got rappers and R&B singers who are fighting, and they're getting a bigger pay-per-view draw than what Frez would get because of how the WBA treats their own fighters. And it's disgraceful.
So, Champ, I got a couple of questions for you, unrelated. I'm kind of curious, when you tell me about the Chris Bird fight. Give me the whole experience of that, because I'm a fan. I watched that when I was a kid. What was that? What are your memories of the Chris Bird fight, both leading up to it and the in-ring fight?
Oh, man, that was a great memory. That was in my 20s. That was my first heavyweight championship fight. I was so geeked. And then moving back to my country, to have this country, lifted on my shoulders, cheering me on for the most prestigious title in sports, the World Heavyweight Championship. It was a dream come true. A kid from the Chicago Housing Project, well, born in San Juan, Puerto Rico, moving as a year-old kid, raised in the housing project, surviving that, successful amateur career. Go back to my country with big reception. They're cheering me on. And who I got in my corner, one of the most, glorifying athlete, boxer in history of Puerto Rico, Tito Trinidad, cheering me on. His father, my main head trainer. I mean, I had everything going for me, going to that fight, my mind, my confidence. There was nothing that's going to beat me, even though I was fighting a great champion, former Olympian, Chris Bird. And there I am, back in 2003, putting on a clinic, one of my greatest performances. I remember going to the fight, just promising, my mom and my dad, and, we came from poverty, and here we are, and I'm going to promise you guys, to bring this gold back. And I did, even though the politics, the Don King, that was my last fight with Don King. I would have been a heavyweight champion, but of course, he made sure to pay his the judges, because like George Foreman said that night, this is a fight, that, in other words, Don King had to pay the judges to make that type of decision, because even Chris Bird, if you guys notice it, his attorney, John Honeywell, they were saying, please give us a rematch. Before the decision was announced, they just knew they lost. They knew they lost. And man, I was so excited. And when they announced the decision, that was the most darkest night of my life. It was just thinking about it, my family, my father, my mom, my siblings, just rejoicing that, wow, we finally got a world championship in Puerto Rico in the heavyweight division, because we're known for, welterweight, lightweight. Puerto Rico's dying of small champions, but I would have been the biggest one. But they still recognize me as a world champion because the whole world seen what I did. Even Chris Bird, I just had a podcast with him. Finally, him admitting that I should have got that decision, which meant a lot to me. Which I posted on my social media, my Instagram, my Facebook. So hopefully you guys will check that out and follow me. But yeah, it was one of my greatest moments, in my career.
Angelo Dundee, how did he impact your career?
Man, Angelo Dundee, man, he was such a blessing. I remember meeting him at the grand opening of the Fifth Street Gym. It was back in 2010. They reopened it. The famous Fifth Street Gym. I mean, you have champions from, of course, Ali, Sugar Ray, Roberto Duran, just to name a few. Roberto Benitez, and of course, the greatest of all time, Muhammad Ali. For me to train at that gym again and relive those moments and having the great Angelo Dundee, training me. I still got pictures, man, of me training that great, we're training with that great trainer. It was a very special moment. It's just sad that, I didn't get the chance to have him in my corner in any of my fights because, of his passing, untimely. But man, that was a great experience of my career as well back in 2000 and 2010. And, God bless his family. And, he had a great team, and they always supported me like if I was, one of his sons.
Last question before we wrap up. When you rocked David Tua, what were you thinking?
Man, it's interesting you bring that question up. That's one of my greatest performances in my boxing career. Actually, that was, right before the Bird fight. And it's interesting because people was looking at me like, why would you take that fight? I mean, that fight's too dangerous. And they have reasons to that. But, again, I'm a warrior. I came from, from the mud. I mean, housing projects. I've been through everything, the judicial system, I had to beat that, a lot of things that was trying to put me down. But I ended up overcoming all the attributes. And that night, everything came together, and I was so dominant, against a puncher who knocked everybody, all the champions out cold. John Reeves out, Hakeem Rockman. I mean, a lot of people, just to name a few. And it just, I was just so overconfident. Remember, I was in my 20s, and I did something that was immature, and that's when you can see my experience, played in, because a fight in that magnitude going to the last round, it was just one more round, I would have been fighting Lennox Lewis at that time in my 20s, because Lennox Lewis was the champion. And man, he ended up catching me with a punch that he's not really known to catch or hit or stop fighters. He hit me with an overhand right, and I remember it. I mean, he dazed me. I mean, it was like a bomb, boom, and I felt it, but he didn't knock me down. I mean, I was still coherent, but I was, walking. My equilibrium was off, and I thought the referee, shouldn't stop it that premature. Even though a lot of people, critics, said I should have took a knee, instead of standing up, which I should have, But again, that explains my inexperience at the time. I wasn't used to getting hurt like that or getting stopped, and referee, pretty much, stopped it. It was very devastating. He didn't knock me down or out or anything like that. He just, he hurt me. I gotta admit, I'm a fighter. I'm not gonna hold anything back. He's one of the hardest punches, not the hardest puncher that I fought. And I'm known to have a good chin. As you can see, I fought, the Oliver McCalls, the James
Black
Tony,
Rhino.
the Black Rhino, who knocked everybody at the time, and I upset him. So yeah, man, that was one of my greatest performances. And after that, David Tua showed me so much love, and that gained me a lot of support. A lot of people like Max Kellerman, everybody respected me as a truth, heavyweight, because at that time they thought I was too small for heavyweight, but I proved them wrong. Size is just a number.
Well, like Bob Dylan said, let's bring it all back home again. So we kind of went on a little tour of kind of your journey to get to the heavyweight title. Let's just one last time talk about how people can get behind y'all, if they can support in any way your chance to become or to get your world title shot that you've been looking for in the last 7 years.
Yes, no, man, I really appreciate, they gotta, follow me, on my social media, on my Instagram, Frezzo Kendo, that's it. If they could, petition and say, the injustices the WBA been doing, I'm gonna post something, soon. Of course, this beautiful interview that we're doing, I'm definitely gonna be posting it. I love for their response, so we can have eyes and ears of what's going on. I don't want this happening to future champions that struggle like myself, that came from poverty and made it to the championship, and then to go through what I'm going through after 7 years of promised world championship. Here I am, have to sue these people. And the good thing is, America is great. The judges, and all that, the court system is 100%. And that's why I'm very confident that we will be getting served justice. And I just hope the WBA do the right thing. Give me another fight, crown me champ, one way or the other by default. I should be champion. It took over 7 years of my career, of my youth. But thank God I live a clean life, don't drink or smoke. I'm the president of my new foundation. Well, I've been having my own foundation for over a decade, and been helping a lot of up-and-coming Golden Glove champions, girls and boys. Sierra Martinez, one of my, champions, that's doing great things, and one of my highly skilled next Olympian that I think you interviewed, recently. But that's my passion, and I just hope we get justice. And people, please, follow me on my social media so you can see, all the things that I do with the youth, and what I prepare to do if I get that opportunity to hopefully either fight or defend my championship.
Okay. And Raid, did you want to add anything to finish this out?
Luke, first of all, thanks a lot for your time. I really appreciate it. Been listening to your stuff for a long time, and Fred has only great things to say about you. But the WBA needs to do the right thing here. They're losing viewership. Look what the MMA is doing. MMA is doing things properly. They're promoting fights properly. They're following their contracts. MMA is having a fight every week. Every Saturday there's an event going on, and there's some during the week sometimes, and the followers are there, and the WBA is losing that, and they shouldn't be. Little kids should want to grow up and be the heavyweight champ like Fred and do the right thing. Most of these guys that are fighting for the heavyweight championship, they are good guys. They're starting nonprofit organizations, and they're out to reach people. I remember as a kid, I was idolizing people like, Muhammad Ali and things like that. And they were in, social outreach, and till this day, he's memorialized, so that's where the WBA has to get to. They've got to do right by Frez. They've got to give him this #1 contender shot. They got to make up restitution for the 7 years that he's lost, and show people that they're doing the right thing, that they're taking a step forward, and then follow the contracts and do the right thing and set up guidelines for the #1 contender and follow those things and follow those contracts, and people will start tuning in again and showing that. And then the boxing can be back where it was when I was a kid, where Tyson, and it was such a huge joy to see Tyson in Holyfield or other fights like that, because they were following the rules at that time and doing things right. But with this thing with Frez, when I read it and I heard his story, it's unbelievable, man. They've stripped his life. This is his career. This is his way of living. And it's very, very sad. So we're hoping they make things right. And then hopefully people see this podcast and support Frez. And we're getting a lot of support from the ESPN community as well. So we're looking for our day in court to bring the integrity back to the WBA.
Well, I want to thank you guys for bringing this story to my awareness, because this is a story that all young fighters need to hear.
Yes, that's true.
Thank you, Luke, for your platform. I appreciate you.
Okay.